The morning that I started labor, I, again, had absolutely no symptoms, was letting my dog out to go to the bathroom. A stray dog runs into our yard. So my dog's out there with the stray dog. I'm 9 months pregnant, so I go and I sprint back to our bedroom to wake up my husband to basically go get our dog. And I think to this day that sprint is really what kickstarted labor.
Hi, I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 5 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Hey everyone, I hope you are doing well. I am doing mostly okay. We are currently a 1-car family. And, I know people do that all the time, but I think the bigger our family gets and the more we have going on, the more difficult and challenging that has been, especially when both my husband and I need a car to do our jobs. So that's been interesting. My 5-year-old had safety town every day this week, so we had to get him there and back. We were keeping another one of my friend's kids this week, so we wanted to go do outings, but then we really couldn't. I had postpartum visits from all those awesome births I just got to go to, but my husband also had jobs that he was trying to go to for his business. So there was a lot of dropping off and picking up and all of the things. It's been interesting. Praying that our other car will be fixed soon, and that it can be fixed and that we don't have to replace it. That's just our current prayer. So circumstantially, it's been interesting, but physically, some of you all have been asking how I've been feeling since all the pregnancy nastiness, and I'm feeling much better. I am 19 weeks now and just doing so much better. I'm still mildly nauseous, still have a few things here and there that I can't really do, and my energy's not quite what I would like for it to be or what I know it could be. And I'm still really avoiding soap at all costs. That's my number one trigger that makes me gag and dry heave and just, nastiness. So I'm still avoiding the dishes, but I'm back to grocery shopping, back to cooking, back to meal planning and prepping and all that, which has been just such a lifesaver. So I'm grateful to not be in the horrible, horrible part of my pregnancy anymore. I'm moving on to better things. Speaking of better things, well, I think it's a better thing. If you haven't signed up for our birth class yet, our summer class starts so soon, just starts in a couple weeks, July 13th. So if you or somebody you know is expecting a baby this fall and they haven't taken a class yet, whether it's their first baby, second baby, third baby, I've had so many second and third time moms take this class. So this isn't just for first time parents. Although if you are a first-time parent, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you take this class. But if you're here near around the Triad, and I've had people drive up to an hour to take this class, which is just really special. But we start July 13th. We go through August 10th. We'll meet on Sunday nights in Kernersville at Village Family Chiropractic. So if you haven't signed up yet, please see me. We do have some more slots available. I think just because of vacation schedules, this class is a little bit smaller. So if that appeals to you, that there aren't as many people in this class, then great. Please come and join us. If for some reason that doesn't work out for your schedule or, you're going on vacation, but you're still having a baby this fall, that is why we have our online class now. In case you haven't heard, our online class is ready to go. It launched a little over a month ago. So it's out there. It's the same exact class as our in-person class, just online in an on-demand format for your convenience. So a link for that is in the show notes as well. So whether you are ready to take the in-person class or the online class, you can find the information that you need in the show notes. And I hope you do. It's a great class. I mean, I can't recommend it enough, but that sounds biased. So you can just go on the site and see all the other people's reviews that highly recommend it. Okay, let's jump into this week's episode. When you have a copper IUD in place, you don't expect to get a positive pregnancy test. But at 16 weeks along, that's just what happened for Mary and her husband. The surprise you must feel at news like that, being told you're 4 months pregnant, but also the peace you can feel knowing it was obviously God ordained. And then God blessed her with an easy pregnancy and delivery as well. Not every first time mom bursts in a hospital. Not every first time mom goes way past her due date. Not every first time mom has a marathon labor. And not every first time mom struggles postpartum or with breastfeeding. And Mary was not your average first time mom. Be encouraged by the grace and mercy in her story today and the love of our Heavenly Father. Welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have Mary with me today. Mary, just take a minute, introduce yourself, let us get to know you, and tell us about your life.
Absolutely. So my name is Mary. I'm actually a financial advisor. So me and my husband, we live here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We have only been here about a year. So we recently moved from Raleigh. So we're kind of getting adjusted and just welcomed our first child. So extremely excited about that and just getting in the thralls of parenthood. A little bit about me and my husband. My husband's born and raised Greensboro, North Carolina. So he has been here his entire life, has family here, a ton of support. I've bounced around a little bit from East Tennessee to Iowa to Nashville, Tennessee to Greensboro to Raleigh. So
Oh,
a
wow.
little bit all over the place, but very excited to call this place home. And now I have some family members that are also in Winston-Salem as well. So during the season, it has been just an absolute joy to soak in community support, everything that comes along with it.
Yeah. Now you have your one baby. So let's
Yes.
talk about this sweet baby. Tell us the story of how the pregnancy came about. What was it like finding out you were pregnant? How long had y'all been married? Give us the story.
Absolutely. So, me and my husband, we've been married 3 years. This pregnancy was not planned. I was actually on an IUD. So, this was extremely rare to get pregnant on the IUD. And we found out pretty late into the pregnancy as well. So, I didn't find out until 16 weeks because I was on the copper IUD. So, I still was having my period and I had missed one full one and took a pregnancy test on the second missed period because we had just moved to a new area. It was a new job. So, some stressors that I didn't think too hard about missing a period. But when I took the at-home pregnancy test and it showed positive, was extremely surprised because being on IUD just didn't think that was really going to be the case. But also knowing that a pregnancy test at home can show ovarian cyst, it can show, ovarian cancer, it can show a couple different things that it's testing for. So a lot of, unanswered questions. So made an appointment with an OB office just to have a test there, get an ultrasound, see what's going on. And so for 2 weeks, because they had quite a bit of a waiting list, they finally got me in and I went alone. I told my husband, I was like, you know what, it's probably nothing. We'll see. And going in and the OB said, first off, I can feel your uterus and it feels about 16 weeks pregnant. So already was extremely surprised and had a little bit more of a heart palpitation when she said she thought she could hear 2 heartbeats. So not only did we think, you're pregnant, surprise, potentially twins, but they were able to get me into an ultrasound that day. So same day finding out you're pregnant, it's a boy, it's not twins. But I remember getting out of that office appointment and calling my husband and just honestly kind of chuckling of, so do you want the news now or later? And he just said, you're a dad. Do you want to know if it's a boy or girl? And, we were very excited. So even though it was a surprise and kind of caught us off guard, it was very much God ordained in that time period of us being settled in a new home, surrounded by family, as well both of us with stable jobs that were able to create a home for our little one. So definitely a surprise, but very exciting. And the blessing too of I wasn't showing at all yet. I didn't have any morning sickness symptoms. So I was very blessed with a very, very easy pregnancy, which I know not a lot of women are fortunate with, but
Right.
it definitely made the process, the timeline of it go by so quickly. So once we did find out, though, I really only had about 4 or 5 months to kind of wrap my mind around preparation, figuring out how I wanted to deliver, and just coming to terms with you're going to be welcoming a child here very, very soon.
Right. So did they have to then take your IUD out?
They did, yep. So with it being a copper IUD, they were able to remove it. Sometimes with the hormonal ones, they will leave them in. But I think it had just gotten displaced a little bit after the move of transporting very heavy dressers and all sorts of things. But
Oh, wow.
kind of crazy one. They in the office they didn't really believe it at first, but they said, "Congratulations."
There it is. There's no denying it.
Exactly. Yep.
So we're unexpectedly pregnant, but what a pleasant surprise, and obviously beyond God ordained in this moment.
Absolutely.
So since pregnancy probably hadn't been on your mind,
Mm-hmm.
how did you go about figuring out what kind of care you wanted and what kind of birth you wanted and all of that? Because I know if you've never thought about it before, I know most people just go like, straight to the OBGYN here in America, but that's not what you did.
Correct. So I knew I have probably one of the worst case of white coat syndrome that I know. Even going through your class, Kayla, when the IV pictures were on, I had to fold my page and just put that away because I was sweating. My husband was chuckling at me, just knowing I was probably going to pass out just seeing the pictures.
Oh, man.
So I knew hospital was not where I wanted to end up. I just didn't know quite what my options were. And funny enough, one of the girls I had actually gone to high school with, who's in Greensboro, she's a labor and delivery nurse, and one of her best friends is a doula who I actually ended up using.
Oh, cool.
And I had seen her page on Instagram and was like, huh, that's neat. I didn't really realize people were able to become doulas, how that happened. And again, just very much God ordained. I was at a coffee shop meeting with one of my clients in Kernersville, and my client had gone into the bathroom and Katie Rancer, who's one of the local doulas, walked in and I recognized her. And I just look at her and I said, "Are you Katie?" And she goes, "Yes, who's asking?" And got to asking with her. And at that point, I was 26 weeks. So I was pretty far along and just had some questions, had considered the birth center, had seen, ideally home would be where I wanted to be, but I didn't know what midwives were available, how to reach out to them, kind of with some of the legality in North Carolina with CPNs versus CNMs. And so just she was able to answer so many questions and was like, "Girl, we can absolutely do this at home. I have a great midwife. She's available in May. We can 100% do this." So having the birth team directive and being able to use them to rely on really shaped how I was able to go about it, because I was pretty much ready to sign on to the birth center and we're about 45 minutes away from there. So I knew I really didn't want to try and make that trek, and I'm glad I didn't because ended up having a very fast first birth. So glad we were home, glad we were stable, glad we had the team able to get there in time because the midwives almost missed it. So we got it just in time.
So another God ordained moment of you just sitting in a coffee shop and the doula that you recognized from Instagram walking out and you were able to to just make all those connections.
Exactly. It's such a weird thing too, just to walk up to somebody that you've never talked to before, but it was one where I just kind of felt that tug of just do it, just ask her the question. And so after that, she and I were able to meet and have kind of that 2-hour consultation of what do you want your birth to look like? Why? What is the motivation for wanting to do home birth? And that was something, even getting my husband on board at first, he was a little hesitant of, people do this. What is a midwife? He's thinking, Renaissance age type of birthing.
Right.
But very quickly came around realizing I had done the research and was able to trust kind of my judgment in bringing on the team, knowing the proper support would be there. And I think after the birth, he was very grateful that we did it at home, seeing just how relaxed and how peaceful of an environment we were able to welcome our son into, and just recovery for us, getting sleep, and that was needed. That was very much needed.
Oh, yes. I know everyone's always concerned about nursing and breastfeeding right after, which is obviously super important, but they don't realize how much more they'll be concerned about getting sleep.
Yes, truly. And just uninterrupted. I mean, even, post birth, of just the amount of skin to skin time both me and my husband were able to have. And, the day after birth where they're so sleepy. I mean, we slept pretty much the entire day and just able to have food brought to us and, rehydrate. It was just again, makes recovery so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you meet your doula in a coffee shop. You guys meet. She hooks you up with a local midwife who's available for you to do a home birth.
Yep.
Okay, so how do you feel like you prepped for a home birth, being a first-time mom? What did you do to get ready for that?
Probably analysis paralysis of
Over prepared.
Which, I mean, I think that can sometimes cause a lot of anxiety, but for me, I'm definitely a planner. So being caught off guard by a pregnancy and not knowing, I wanted to almost play catch up. So I was doing all sorts of research, a ton of just reading, and also too, my doula and midwife were so helpful in providing additional resources of kind of even directing to your class, getting us plugged in there. And luckily you still had a spot right before, our delivery time frame. So doing things like that where, there's so much knowledge that we aren't going to know because we haven't done it, was very helpful to have those outside resources. But I think just the mental preparation of knowing I want to do it at home. I want to do it unmedicated. I don't want to be, transferred into the hospital just because I know my own mental state does not do well with needles being poked and prodded and any sort of white coat. I shut down. So I knew that would stall progression. I knew that would most likely end up in me having a C-section, which I did not want to go down that route. So just mentally getting to the point of, you're going to do it at home, you're going to breathe through your birth, and these are the techniques that you need to be prepared for. So I think ultimately I prepared basically to get to the point of nearly dying and doing it at home. So then labor didn't seem so bad.
I prepared for death. So
yes, pretty much.
and then brought forth life. So
Exactly.
Well, so your pregnancy was shorter because you didn't find out till later. Tell us the birth story then. Take us into the labor. How far along were you? How did it start? All the details.
So I actually ended up delivering 2 days before my estimated due date, which was very surprising because I did not have any sort of labor-inducing symptoms up until that point. I honestly thought I was going to go probably 2 weeks past, especially with the due date being a little bit gray because we didn't know until later on. So it was, a guesstimate at best. With that being said, the morning that I started labor, I, again, had absolutely no symptoms, was letting my dog out to go to the bathroom. A stray dog runs into our yard. So my dog's out there with the stray dog. I'm 9 months pregnant, so I go and I sprint back to our bedroom to wake up my husband to basically go get our dog. And I think to this day that sprint is really what kickstarted labor. It was just one of those unprompted, we were going to fix the situation. But I actually ended up going into work that day because really still didn't have any symptoms or anything, but right around the afternoon started getting a little crampy. Nothing crazy, but just kind of, I want to go home. It was a Friday, so I figured leaving work wasn't too crazy. So went home, and I had actually told my sister-in-law, who had delivered a week before me, that I was going to bring her some food. So wanted to still go ahead and do that. So we made the trek to Greensboro, which is about 45 minutes, took her the food, and on that trip started having some contractions. And they weren't crazy, but they were about 10 minutes apart pretty consistently. So we, let the birth team know of, hey, starting some contractions, nothing crazy. And the advice is, you're in for the long haul, marathon, try and take a walk, get some sleep tonight, you're fine. and get home, and contractions really start ramping up. So still going to walk, but then we're at 7 minutes apart, and then we're at 5 minutes apart, and 11 o'clock, they were really kicking up, and my husband had been tracking contractions and just keeping our families updated. And my mom, who lives about 20 minutes away, was like, can I just come get some eyeballs on her? I just want to make sure she's doing well. And so she and my dad came over, and I'm very glad they did, because after that point, contractions were probably about 5 minutes apart. So we were really starting to get into closer to active labor, and reach out to the doula and just, hey, here's kind of what everything's looking at. Still able to talk through things, still able to, have a smile on my face, bouncing on an exercise ball. We're chugging along. It's not comfortable, but it's not agonizing. And she was like, okay, I'll head that way in a little bit. So she actually got over to our house probably about 2:50 a.m. At that point, we're 3 minutes apart. So contractions are really progressing. We're moving pretty quickly. And the first thing she said when she walks in, she looks at the contractions on my husband's phone and goes, okay, why are you still smiling? What's going on here? And so getting through that, she recognizes instantly that I'm completely back labor. So it's one, she puts me in a different position, and then it's game time at that point. So she just had my husband standing behind me, kind of lifting up on my belly, me with my feet at an angle, and then moved me to the toilet facing backwards. And from 2:50, water broke at 3:33 on the toilet, made it super easy for cleanup. And then he was delivered at 4:44. So our midwife, we actually were planning on using a birth pool tub, and I was supposed to pick it up at our appointment on Monday, but I started going into labor on Friday, so we didn't have the tub there. So she was bringing it up from Salisbury. So we knew probably with how fast I was progressing, wasn't going to be able to use the tub. And we had a couple supplies that were still coming in the mail. Again, we thought we had more time. And so between my mom, the doula, the birth assistant, they're all setting up supplies, like, you're going to be delivering in your bed. Let's get it as clean as we can. So they're laying out check pads and I think like shower curtains and all the fun things to help with cleanup. But yeah, as soon as she helped shift him into a better position, I mean, it was engagement. He was ready to be delivered. Tried getting in the shower for a little bit and was like, I got to start pushing. It's time. And at that point, the midwife wasn't there. So I'm on the bed. We're starting to push a little bit, but not crazy, trying to kind of keep it regulated. And then our midwife got there, and 10 minutes later, he was born, and we were happy as a clam. So it ramped up very, very fast as soon as we got that correct positioning. But it was a pretty short labor from when it was true active labor, but was very, very blessed with no complications, nothing crazy, but it was a good time.
Sounds like it. Okay, so you started having contractions like that evening when you were taking your sister-in-law dinner. And then what time do you feel like active labor really kicked in?
I would say probably around 8 or 9 that night, of when it was kind of like, okay, these, need to kind of take a second or walk through them or just move around a little bit, not just sit down and be fine. As soon as my mom and dad got there, though, that's when they were definitely just, okay, we're in full on active labor. So I would say between 9 and 11 is really where things were in full force.
So really you had like an 8-hour experience?
If that.
Right, yep. Which for a first-time mom is not very long. No. And you went early, going against all the textbook stuff.
Exactly. It was the sprint. So
it was a sprint. You sprinted and the baby decided to come.
Exactly.
I have a client who's almost 42 weeks. Maybe I'll tell her to go on a sprint this afternoon. Let's go sprint. So were you ended up being on your bed then when you delivered him?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. That's wonderful. And your midwife had just made it. So that's good.
Exactly. And we had no tearing or anything. So it ended up working out. Even being on the back, ended up being okay.
So, can you give us the stats? Like, how much did he weigh, and do you want, if you want to share his name and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff?
So it's Colson James Thackerson is his name. He was born 20 inches long and 6 pounds even. So we had a lot of even numbers. Waterbrook at 333, born at 444, 6 pounds, 20 inches. So we had a lot of fun little numbers along with him. But he is already putting on quite a bit of weight. So he's ramping up. The 6 pounds sounds nice now that he's really junking up. The back is feeling it.
Oh, a 6 pound baby. Sometimes I
Hmm.
dream about those because mine are closer to 12 pounds than they are to 6 pounds. So,
It's wild to me.
oh, that's wild to me. Okay, so first time mom, home birth, how does breastfeeding go?
It's actually been pretty well. He latched very early on. Honestly, haven't had any sort of cracking or bleeding or anything like that. So he's definitely a hungry little boy. So he very much eats quite a bit. But yeah, it's actually been going well. We're still figuring out because we're, I guess, 2.5, 3 weeks in. Still figuring out the gulping and some of those things and just getting a proper latch each time. But he's really taken a knack to it, and so I've been very blessed with easy pregnancy, relatively easy breastfeeding journey thus far. So
Right.
still have a long way to go.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I'm amazed. You're up. You're looking beautiful. You seem
Well,
very
thanks.
alert and like and I'm like, wow, you're like in the thick of it right now with with the newborn postpartum and you're just but that goes to show you too like just how much your labor and your delivery can impact your postpartum.
Absolutely. And even just having the support as well. I think that truly makes a difference. Like even immediately after my mom actually stayed for 3 or 4 days and did kind of the night shift and just helped, the kind of some of the quelling and putting him back to sleep, would bring him into nurse and just letting me and my husband get as much sleep as possible so that we could almost get a sleep reserve, if you will.
Mhm.
And, we're still figuring out. I have such an amazing, supportive husband who, we're a tag team. And if he's walking across to go do the diaper change and then I'm feeding, and, we just really share the load quite a bit. And so that's huge in terms of just, I think, mental sanity.
Yeah. How has he adjusted to becoming a dad?
He's very much a natural. He was the one while I was still pregnant, like, how much longer do I have to wait? So he is very ready, and he's just he has such a compassionate heart, and he's so gentle with Colson, and just it warms my heart to see him in that role. It seems like he's been a dad for his whole life.
Oh, that's so sweet. So, with this whole experience, especially it being a surprise, a big surprise, what do you feel like God taught you throughout, beginning to end? And it can be multiple things too.
Yeah. I think, well, first off, is fully surrendering. I don't think I had ever really encountered something in my life where fully giving over control, because just seeing how gracious God has been in this season, whether it's from, just protection in early pregnancy, bringing family members close, because my sister, she was living out in California. My other sister was down in Florida, bringing them both to Winston-Salem, having my parents here, just having us move from Raleigh and settling in a home that works so much better than, a 2-story, having to go up and down stairs a million times. It's just everything that has lined up to this point has been so gracious, and I've felt God's hand in it. It's not just these little coincidences of having the doula in the coffee shop. It's, hand placed for such a time as this. And I think especially leading up to where once labor was really starting to kick off, I remember being in the shower and just crying because I was, it's scary of, okay, it's finally here. You go all of these months leading up into this point, and how am I going to handle it? How is it going to play out? And I just remember, tears streaming down. And in my Bible that morning, it was the story of David and Goliath. And that was one where it's not a story you read often, but, it kind of catches your attention. And I just remember praying for, Lord, just give me the strength of David, just looking at that giant and just being fully confident and heading on into it. And that's exactly how the birth played out. It was just a calm and peaceful experience, and seeing what that surrender, handing that over to God and trusting that He will deliver through one of the craziest things that women go through. It's very moving, very, very moving.
That's beautiful. What do you feel like if you could give advice to moms out there, moms or dads, anybody, based on the experience you just had, what advice would you give them?
I would say look outside of the box. Don't think that you have to do it a certain way just because somebody else did it that way. Just looking into the options that exist, I think, is huge. Also, it allows you to develop thoughts about how you actually want to be a parent and how you want to welcome life, not just how do we want to set up the nursery. So I think shifting focus into how are we going to raise a child, and how do we want their first experiences to be, and how do we want our experience to be as first-time parents. I think the more research people do and the more options that they see actually exist and can be just as supportive, if not in a lot of cases safer, or just less interventions, I think is a really beautiful option. Because I know, home isn't for everybody. Some people still want to be in a hospital, but my advice to them would be grab a doula, grab advocates that are going to be able to support you through that journey. So I think there's so many more options than people have, and as they're planning, whether it's a planned pregnancy, whether it's unexpected, just looking into what those options are.
Awesome. I agree wholeheartedly, for sure. Wish I had with my first. Well, thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, especially so freshly postpartum. This is impressive.
Sometimes it's easier to share while you're still kind of on the birth high. I feel like it's a little bit more exciting, because definitely when you go through the birth the way that you want it, I want to share that, and I want other women to be able to experience it, because I know so many have had birth trauma, or they haven't had that first birth being the experience that, they wanted and to be able to cherish. And so I think the more people that hear it can be done, sometimes you just have to make choices that you wouldn't conventionally think of. So it's very exciting. So thank you for letting me share.
Oh, goodness. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram, or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands. Yeah, awesome. It's fun. Well, it's another laboring client. I was a little nervous that I was going to have to be like, Mary, I'm out of birth. But she's not quite in labor yet, but we're praying for her because she's 42 weeks this weekend. So crossing our fingers and praying she goes into labor.
Big please, just come on, let it go.
I know, poor mama.